Today we're going to be talking about a little town called Asheboro, just a little ways down Highway 220. Asheboro is the home of the North Carolina Zoological Park and also a rich tradition in baseball. When I started my research, I went to the first resources I could think of, my grandparents.
My name's Nancy Chisholm Cox. I worked for, when I went to work there, it was called, the division I worked in was called McCreary, July 1955. My sister and I would go to the baseball games when I was in my teens. The industrial baseball was better than TV because you get to, know the people, and that way, just watching TV, you're just watching a picture on them.
My name is Richard Cox. Back in the late 30s and early 40s, and after the war, it became evident that somebody had to have entertainment, and this was what they had. Therefore, the local baseball teams was well attended. That time and era was a beautiful golden era.
My grandparents led me to other people who knew about this semi-pro baseball phenomenon, including a record store owner, an editorial writer for the Courier Tribune, the local newspaper, and also actual players from that time.
In the late 30s and the early 40s, Asheboro was a real kind of a laid-out village town. Everybody worked in the mills. And I guess for recreation, they sponsored baseball teams, and somewhere along in there, the McCreary Eagles came along from McCreary Hosier Mill.
You had an opportunity here, you had a job, with the mill, and you got to play ball. So in a sense, you're a professional baseball player.
I went to work there November 19th, 1945. Yeah, I worked when I got out of service. I come to McCreary to play baseball and basketball with McCreary Eagles.
Yeah, they played all the colleges. Even when I come to work at McCreary, we played Carolina, Duke, Wake Forest. We played all the colleges. We played more for the fun of it than we did anything else. That was just the highlights of our day, our time.
I picture that place and that time, it's something out of a movie, from the 40s, I think. Now the Eagles played guys who, were big leaguers eventually. Eddie Matthews, Smokey Burgess were with the High Point team that they played against.
And they always played on a Saturday, and that Saturday was the reason for Saturday was everybody was not working on Saturday afternoon.
Do you remember how much it would cost to get into a game like that?
I'd say 25 cents maybe.
You could be outside on a nice summer night, buy you a hot dog and a drink, and the ball game's going on, and what better atmosphere could there be?
In the 1930s and 40s, there were three teams that dominated baseball in Asheboro. Bossong Hosiery Mill was one of those teams. They were called the Bossong Indians, and they existed before World War II. Another team was Lucas Industries, a furniture industry plant in Asheboro, and they existed after World War II. And finally, the hosiery mill Acme McCreary existed during both these times. When any of these teams met on a baseball diamond, the competition was fierce.
Oh my Lord, yes.
Listen, when Lucas McCreary played, you might as well close up all the stores. It was a ghost town. Everybody went to the ball game.
I believe you could have robbed the bank up here in the middle of town in Asheboro, and nobody would have known it for a day or two, because everybody would show up. The entire league, the purpose was to beat McCreary. That was the object of the whole thing. Now we could play Albemarle, and we could play Robbins, and we could play Siler City, but to beat McCreary, that was the thing.
Back then, they wanted to beat McCreary, just like basketball now, everybody wanting to beat you. Then they know You beat them, but you beat the best.
Throughout my research, I found players who played in the league, workers, and even average people who had seen or heard of this semi-pro baseball phenomenon. However, whenever I asked a really tough question, I always got the same answer.
I don't know. It's a baseball. Ask Charlie. Charlie knows.
Charlie Robbins has all that information.
Charlie Robbins told me a story one time.
Charlie Robbins, if you talked to him?
You were either for the Bosong Indians or the McCurry Eagles. There wasn't no in between. I mean, that's the way you'd go to the ball game and you could tell it.
This Charlie they are talking about is Charlie Robbins. Known in the community as a local baseball guru, he played second base for the McCurry Eagles, and his story in itself could be a documentary. Fortunately, he agreed to help in my research as well.
Bosong Indians, they were playing, they were great back in the mid-30s. And the textile mill owners wanted to do something for their employees, you know, and having a baseball team, because baseball was the sport back then, that was baseball at its cleanest.
What would you say it was like around town whenever McCrary would play Lucas or Bosong?
Oh, gracious. They'd all be there, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I suspect it was over 50% of people walked to the game.
Yeah.
People back in those days, they'd get out of work and they'd walk from uptown to the ball field. And we'd rent out cushions. My brother would for about 25 cents a piece, and then when the game was over, it was my job to go pick them up and bring them back and put them in the boxes.
Well, playing third base, there would always be a group over in the third base section that'd either be for you or against you. And I enjoyed that. That made the game.
They'd just ride us, play us, haul at us and different things. And we used, there's some of them old fellas, we played over at Lindley Park. They'd be over there before the players get up. Sit in that little old grass, they had about a dozen of them old fellas.
The women, if they were single, of course, they were like to go sit on the front row and watch them play.
For the fans, it was certainly a joy that you won't see repeated, where you can go over there, spend a very little bit of money, have a good time, anybody can go, kind of thing.
Like I told somebody, there's more people over there to ride you in batting practice back then than there would be at the ball games now. I mean, I'm serious, that's true.